Hey everyone, really impromptu video here. I just finished watching the end of Season 2 of Mandalorian, and I was struck with a couple thoughts. The most important thing that I think this trilogy has given us is a combination of hope and excitement. And I'm not really sure which is the most important. They're two different things. The excitement is, purely on the part of the audience. We see something flashy, we see some cool move, we get excited, we think, oh, that looked really sweet. But that doesn't necessarily, that's not us looking at the story. That's not us saying we want this character to live. We're just caught up in the excitement of the moment. And that's something that The Mandalorian has done extremely well compared with the sequel trilogy. And as I'm talking about this, I'm going to be as ambiguous as possible for anyone who has not seen the end of Season 2. But both hope and excitement are a huge part of this in a way that just has not been in Star Wars for a very long time. And yes, they are doing an amazing job of tying all of the different story elements together, and yes, they are slowly working towards the sequel trilogy storyline, but at the same time, they're doing it in a completely different way that is not just entertaining, but is also hopeful. We are able to see our heroes go through struggles, and we are able to see minor characters die, and we are still hopeful for the future of this storyline in a completely different way. Like the way that Han died in the sequel trilogy, the way that Luke died in the sequel trilogy, they did not offer hope for the future of the storyline. And the deaths were only mildly entertaining. It wasn't enough to really keep us invested in the future of that story, but Mandalorian has gone completely the opposite way. They are putting such an emphasis on making sure that every story element they have is not only entertaining but makes sense both to the characters and to the overarching storyline. And yes, The Mandalorian is playing on our nostalgia, big time. So much of the reason that we love this show is pure nostalgia because we are remembering the original trilogy. It doesn't build very much on the prequels, although it does acknowledge them a little bit. It is almost completely the original trilogy that this is piggybacking off of. Would this show be as popular without all of these throwbacks? Without us thinking of Boba Fett and IG-88 and seeing the Empire in a completely different way than the First Order is represented? I don't think this show would have been nearly as popular. And they took those elements and introduced them in a new way. They didn't just reuse them like the sequel trilogy reused many of the same plots of a space battle station that can immediately destroy a planet. They took these elements and made new uses out of them. They used Boba Fett, but they used him in new ways. They used IG-88, but they use him in new and different ways. In The Last Jedi, we have female characters who are in roles that just do not make sense. They seem forced into the storyline just so the creators are able to say that they are being inclusive. In The Mandalorian, they have just as many women involved in the story, and it doesn't feel abnormal at all. It feels completely natural for these awesome women to be running around, shooting, blowing stuff up, and it doesn't feel forced at all. Hope and entertainment. The entertainment can be done right without the storyline being done well enough for people to continue to be interested in it. That's one reason that a lot of fans really did enjoy The Last Jedi, because it was entertaining. Stuff was blowing up, ships were flying around, lightsabers were swung, things happened, and that was entertaining enough for people to be interested. But when you look at the storyline, what is there to be hopeful about in the future? And not just in The Last Jedi, but in the entire sequel trilogy. There is just so little at the very end of the entire sequel trilogy. Everything is gone, and Rey is alone. Luke wound up with his friends again. He had the ghosts of his mentors there alongside him. Han had Leia. Everyone had someone. Rey ended up with nothing. She's back out in the desert with BB-8, the one place she was trying to escape from her whole life. The next trilogy needs to have the hope, Not just the entertainment value, but it needs to have the hope that George Lucas had always wanted. He didn't want to have characters even die in his films. He wanted it to be a fantasy that people would feel good after they finished watching it. So fingers crossed when they make the next trilogy, that Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, all the people that have been working on Mandalorian, fingers crossed that they'll be in charge as well. Because it is now obvious that the higher level producers should not be the ones making the decisions here. It needs to be these directors who understand the story, who understand how to integrate characters into that story, how you can be inclusive without making it look like you're pushing an agenda. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. I've got a lot more projects in the works. Hopefully I'll have something coming out next weekend. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you next time.